Hello everyone, welcome to the Ceci Truman Live Show. This show will be starting in just a few moments, so stay tuned. And if you're seeing this on social media, please like, share, and follow. For more information, go to trumanforcongress.com. This show is brought to you by Ceci Truman. Here's Ceci.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Ceci Truman Live program or show. Today, we are going to discuss Israel. Israel is on the forefront of every news and cable program. And, you know, I have run for Congress in California, District 25. It is a border district. And as I spoke very much on border issues, I also would talk about Israel. And I would get asked, why do I discuss Israel so much? Well, on October 7, there was a breach in security. I was recently in Israel in June last year. We were there on a delegation to view border walls, security measures. We were led by IDF generals and colonels. We went inside a Hezbollah tunnel that has since been seized by Israel. We went to Lebanon-Syria border. We went to the Gaza border. We went to the Egyptian border. We went to the Golan Heights. And all to view, what does Israel do to secure her tiny little nation, the size of the state of New Jersey? Well, I come home and guess what? We are doing the complete opposite of what Israel does as far as security is concerned. We have complete open borders. And, you know, what was done to Israel is being plotted and planned for America. We need to get real about this. We have complete open borders. We have about 20 million people, mostly military-aged men, that have entered our country unvetted. We don't know who they are, mainly where they come from. You know, they come from 160 countries, and we know that not all people are here with good intentions. Now, you know, we're going to talk about Israel with my very special guest, Ken Timmerman. He's an author. He is a Middle East expert. He has worked very closely with, working closely with our American government. And he is a journalist, and author of several books. We will discuss what happened on October the 7th in Israel. We will discuss what is happening in America with the rise of anti-Semitism, not only here in America, but worldwide. And finally, we will discuss what is happening currently between Israel and Iran's proxies. So please welcome Ken Timmerman to the show.
Thank you, Ceci. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Yes, it really is. I met you about a little over a year ago. Right. You are a speaker at a conference here in Southern California, and I was truly amazed by your story and just your words of wisdom as well. You have a testimony of surviving being held hostage in, I want to say it was the West Bank. Is that correct?
In Beirut in 1992.
Okay. And then alongside of that, you have a testimony. You are a Middle Eastern specialist. You worked in France when all this began, you as a journalist. And, Ken, I wanted to discuss with you, everything going on currently, what happened on October the 7th. But first, I would like to show a clip of what you do to give the people a visual of what Timmerman's normal life is like. So let's go ahead and roll that clip.
Of much of what has happened in the world in the last half century is just out, and the rest is history. Tales of hostages, arms dealers, dirty tricks, and spies. Kenneth Timmerman, welcome back to the Dennis Prager Show.
Thanks for having me on, Dennis. It's always a pleasure.
They say it on television. They carry out policies predicated on this idea, as Jim mentioned, that Iran is not a threat or that we can negotiate with them. These appeasement policies, I believe, will bring us to a war we do not need and that we can actually prevent. I can think of no greater purpose to unite us here today than to take the actions and to pursue the policies that would, in fact, effectively prevent that war from taking place.
Author and former member of the National Security and Foreign Policy Advisory Board for Trump, Ken Timmerman. Also with us.
When they were beating me, they called me Yahud and Jasus. And in Arabic, that means Jew and spy. So they thought I was an Israeli spy. I was a kid. I was 28 years old. And at that point, living in Paris, I was, as most of the media there, I was pro-Palestinian. So I went there to report on the Palestinians from the Palestinian side. And what they do, they kidnapped me and held me hostage for 24 days. There's no rationality. It's just what happens. The same way that I got out of that jail when they were taking people out from underground and out into the next blind alley and shooting them. There's no rationality. It was God's will. And I think it was something that tempered me. It was like tempering steel. It made me grow up. I was a 28-year-old spoiled left-wing pro-Palestinian philandering fellow traveler. And it turned me into a man. And it turned me into somebody who became very pro-American, conservative, a born-again Christian Zionist.
Okay, so Ken, please share with us, the audience, your story. You have an amazing book called The Rest is History.
Well, briefly, I started out on the left in Paris, on the left bank, with left bank anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian intellectuals and reporters, went to cover the 1982 Beirut war as a freelance radio reporter, and had lots of connections with the Palestinians. I stopped in their so-called embassy in Athens on my way to Beirut, and they promised me I would be welcomed in open arms. And of course, as soon as I got into West Beirut, they took me hostage. And I was held for 24 days in an underground room. We were bombed day in and day out. At some point near the end, they were taking Lebanese prisoners in particular, but others, they were taking them out into the alleyway and shooting them. And it was unclear if any of us were going to survive. And I found comfort in that dark underground place with Jesus Christ. I came to know my Savior very personally. I was brought up as a Christian, so this was not a conversion story, but I had not had a personal, physical proximity to Jesus. And I understood after I was beaten by the Palestinians and was in horrible pain, I could hardly walk. That's when it really came over me, and I understood how much he had suffered, how much way more than anything I could possibly ever suffer myself, how much he had suffered, and he had done it for me, and it was for free. There was nothing I could do to pay him back. He didn't do it for any reason. He did it for me. And that really changed my life, understanding that about Jesus, and also just feeling his physical presence. And I came back out of that bitten by the bug of the Middle East, and instead of going back home to Paris and returning to my previous life as a teacher and as a translator, interpreter, I started to work for a variety of U.S. newspapers. USA Today. I was in Beirut again in April of '83 when the embassy was blown up. This was what I call it in my book, first blood by the Iranian regime against us after the hostage crisis. So they killed 63 Americans. And I kept on going back. I covered the Iran-Iraq war. In Iraq, I got to know every arms dealer in Baghdad who was selling weapons to Saddam Hussein. And that's quite an entertaining story that you can read, and the rest is history. And also in France became the target. This is kind of an interesting piece of it that people don't know about, became the target of French intelligence. And the French had a equivalent of an FBI agent who was monitoring my activities, monitoring my telephone, and came to me one day and he said, Mr. Timmerman, there's two ways we can do this. Either I can convoke you down to my office once a month and grill you about what you're doing, and you can answer whatever you want to answer, or I can take you to lunch. I said, I think lunch sounds good. So that began a number of years of regular lunches with French intelligence officials. And we actually shared information at one point. They provided me information about Imad Mougnier, who was a Lebanese terrorist. He before 9/11, he had more American blood on his hands than anybody else. And finally, Mougnier became the Iranian regime's chief overseas operations officers for their terrorist operations from Argentina to Lebanon and Iraq and elsewhere. And the Israelis finally got him with some U.S. help in 2008 on Valentine's Day in Damascus. So that's kind of in a nutshell. I went from this left bank, anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian person in Paris, and became a born-again Christian, pro-Israel Zionist.
So you were in a prison how long?
I was there for 24 days, being bombed day in and day out. And when I went into the building, in the cellar of the building, there was 8 floors. It was a Mediterranean building. There's 8 floors. When I got out, by the grace of God, there was 1.5 stories and pancakes on top. So we were getting buried alive in the bombardments.
Wow, amazing. And what type of experience did you have that you came to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, or we like to say Yeshua?
Well, they at one point we were visited in this prison. There were 2 French guys with me. They were actually, one of them was a foreign legionnaire, and they had actually been sent on an operation against the Palestinians, but had never told them what they had done. They were mining the outskirts of the Beirut airport as some of those mines exploded. So we were there at one point together in the cell, and during a bombing, and down comes an American woman and an American guy, probably in their 30s, and we start whistling the Star-Spangled Banner and the French national anthem, the Marseillaise, to them, and they were terrified. Turns out I figured out who they were later on. You can read that and the rest is history. It's quite a story, because they're people you will understand who they are. They're real people, and so we were taken up after that and beaten by the Palestinians, and they practiced what is called the bastonade. Which is basically they beat you on the soles of your bare feet with 3 strands of old electric cable tied together with tape, and they whack you and whack you and whack you until you basically go unconscious. And it was that pain, it was in that pain is when I understood the suffering of my risen Lord, and that he had done it for me. And it was what I had undergone was nothing compared to what he had done.
Yes, I like to say that, what Jesus Christ did, or Yeshua did on the cross as the perfect holy Lamb of God, he did for free. But I always say it wasn't cheap though. And you experience physical pain and torture. So it brought you to the experience of what Christ, it was a taste of what Christ went through for us, for our sins. He laid our sins on himself so that we would have passage to eternity with God. So yes, and everyone must read his story. I have to admit, I got halfway through, but it's very riveting. And this is a true life story that everyone must read. You will not be able to put the book down. Okay, so I want to also discuss October the 7th. As I had said previously, there was a ceasefire on October the 6th. Mm-hmm. And in case some audience members are not aware of how things work in the Middle East, Iran is behind all the proxies, whether we're talking about ISIS, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, and I'm probably missing a few more, but Iran likes to operate from a distance. Iran likes to have their proxies doing all its dirty work for them. And on October 7th, Hamas acted preemptively on a holy day in Israel. At 5:30, not even the members of Hamas knew what was about to take place. They thought it was a normal drill. By 6:30 a.m., I heard they were given some form of a drug, that's not confirmed, but I was told they were given some form of drug that made them even more. Made the acts even more horrific. I can't even fathom just a human hurting other humans in the manner that was done on October the 7th. And these were innocent civilians. These were women, children, elderly. These were soldiers, female, male. And of course, the Nova Festival that took place. And a lot of those people at the Nova Festival, they were there for, it was supposed to, be a peaceful event. I think, they thought that, they could, we could all be united with Palestinians, but, the Palestinians had something else in mind. 70% of the Palestinians, even after October 7th, there was a poll taken, they still support Hamas. And some of the Palestinian men actually participated in some of the gruesome acts. And I don't know if you're comfortable stating, but I would like for you to if you would feel comfortable saying what exactly happened on that day.
Well, a lot of this, Ceci, we know because these monsters wore cameras. They had GoPro cameras on their helmets or on their on their chests like that, and the Israelis later recovered them with the footage. So you see them raping women. You see them going in and slaughtering people in their safe rooms. You see them killing children, beheading children. All of these things are now they're videotaped by Hamas themselves. They were proud of it. You see them capturing women and taking them back, with their hands in zip ties in the back of a truck, and say, one guy calls his buddy back in Gaza and says, "Hey, I've got one of the slave girls I'm going to bring back." A sex slave is basically what he was saying. And so this kind of adds to just the human toll. The details of the atrocities themselves go beyond just about anything I think we've ever seen on that battlefield before, between Israel and its neighbors, for barbarity and inhumanity. I was in Israel at about 6 weeks or so after the attacks. I took filmmaker Ricky Schroeder there. We were to see if we could make a film with the IDF about what had happened and about U.S. soldiers who had come back to do their duty, their reserve duty in Israel. And it was really the mood change was so dramatic from what had been before. There's before October 7th, and then there's after October 7th. And you could just sense this national unity in Israel, which was so powerful. In addition to the shell-shocked, everybody was still shell-shocked from the attacks, but they were united together, and everyone was sending their daughters and their sons to the front, to Gaza, to fight. They were proud of what they were doing, and every family in Israel either had a casualty in their own family from the IDF or from October 7th, or had a very, very good friend who was somehow either killed or wounded in the attacks or in the fight. So this is something in a small nation. It was on the scale of about 20 times the 9/11 attacks on America.
Exactly. And just to add to that, 240 people were kidnapped, and that includes women, innocent civilians. I mean, people need to visualize their own neighborhood here in America. They need to visualize your neighborhood getting attacked by terrorists that are crazy. Like you said, they were monsters doing the worst atrocities. And we haven't really said the worst of it. 10,000 rockets dropped in their neighborhoods, in their cities. We had 1,400 soldiers and Israelis that had died, and 5,400 that were injured. And so, there's a lot of what we call Holocaust deniers that are now October 7 deniers. And actually, we've got a lot of young people going out into the streets that really don't know the true history and truly what they're talking about, because they're shouting from the river to the sea, which means the extermination of the Jewish people. That's what that means, that phrase. And did you see the film? There was an unfiltered film. You mentioned the GoPros that Hamas was very proud. They were very proud to show the atrocities that were committed. Were you able to view that?
I did not see that footage, but I had it described to me in some detail by people in the Israeli government. It was pretty impactful. It even apparently turned some, I don't know if it turned some hearts at the United Nations, but the Israelis showed it to UN ambassadors. And I remember watching them come out of that room, seeing them on TV come out of that room, and they were quite sobered indeed by what they had seen.
Well, yeah, a lot of them, I'm just going to say it plainly, they wanted to throw up. They were, I watched footage of people even now, journalists now, saying they still have nightmares from that. And I'm just going to say a few things. Fathers' eyes were pulled out, hands were cut off in front of the children, women's breasts were cut off, a baby was put in an oven, the oven turned on, and people were left just to bleed to death. And I know that reporters reported going into certain neighborhoods or kibbutzes, and there were hundreds of heads beheaded, decapitated heads, everywhere. And so this is the denial of what the world just doesn't want to address. And I'm talking mostly on the radical left. I'm very concerned with the young people, and a lot of them are, have been indoctrinated in the universities. And we know a lot of professors are, have been paid in the school unions and have been paid off by either China, dark money, or even the Muslim Brotherhood are professors in these universities. And so we've got a lot of indoctrinated youth. Now it's even filtering down to the high school levels. What is your take on all of that?
I think it's tragic. I think it's unfortunate, and it's also predictable. We lost control of the universities really in the 60s, the 60s and the 70s. So now you're on your second generation of anti-American, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic people coming out of these programs, whether it's Middle East studies programs or whether it's just their ordinary English 101. Today it's just English 101. They're being taught that Israel is an apartheid nation, and that the United States is the worst country that has ever existed in the world, not the best, and that we were founded on slavery. They're teaching kids critical race theory, which is essentially a Marxist ideology that says that America was founded as a slave nation and has been a slave nation ever since. It's pathetic. It's ridiculous. But unfortunately, this is what has gripped this younger generation. When you see all these kids, for example, trying to shut down the Golden Gate Bridge or the Brooklyn Bridge in New York to protest, quote unquote, against Israel. And they do it the day after Israel has been attacked directly by Iran, by the Iranian regime. I mean, that is how pathetic this is. They are living in an alternate universe where they are praising the murderers, right, and they're condemning the righteous. That's the world that we live in today.
Exactly. And it's very concerning. And I pray for America. I pray for Israel as well, for God to give them supernatural wisdom and discernment in this time, because they also were attacked once again just a few days ago. And again, this is a pre-recorded episode. We may show this a little bit sooner than my normal Sunday evening. But let's talk about Iran. For the first time since 1948, Iran has not used only the proxies, but they have attacked Israel themselves. Now, a miracle took place just a few days ago, and Israel was able to intercept 99% of all the rockets that came through. And that was, let's see, the numbers, 350 projectiles, and that includes cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and drones. And another thing to add to it is the Jordanians and Saudi Arabia participated in those interceptions of those projectiles. But so what is your take on Iran for the first time? And I think they feel like they may have gotten away with it. I'm not sure what the mentality is, but this is, in my opinion, has emboldened Iran to do this again. They are bullies, and how do bullies think? So what do you say about, or what is your take on all of this?
Well, Ceci, I've got to admit to you, I did not think that the Iranians would be so reckless to launch a direct strike against Israel from their territory. Why? Because it is a green light to Israel to finally carry out attacks against Iran, whether it's their nuclear infrastructure or Revolutionary Guards headquarters or other very meaningful real estate that they have in Iran. And the Iranian regime does not want that to happen. They don't want it to happen because they know they will not intercept or down a single Israeli plane. They know that. And they know that the Iranian people will see that, and the regime will then appear weak. And they cannot appear weak in the face of the Iranian people, because then they could very well be overthrown. Let us hope that's what happens. Now, here's what finally emboldened the regime to attack. And I have this in a column that appeared in Front Page Mag on Tuesday. It now appears that the United States actually gave the green light to Iran to launch this attack against Israel, something I never, ever would have conceived possible. But President Biden, going through the foreign minister of Turkey, and also apparently through members of the Swiss government, was passing messages back and forth with the Iranians. And he said, look, it's okay as long as you do this within certain limits. And one of the limits is don't attack civilian targets. I remember listening before we knew that Israel, with the United States, Jordan, France, and the UK had succeeded in knocking down almost all of the arsenal that was launched against them. Before we knew that, I watched a guy named Norman Rule, who is the former U.S. National Intelligence Officer for Iran, on CNN, After we knew that the attacks had been launched, because it takes about 6 or 7 hours for drones,
Right.
they leave Iran to reach Israel. So we had this surreal 6 or 7 hour warning period where the Iranians had actually told us that they've launched drone strikes, and you could hear they were on their way. These things make a racket like a lawnmower in the sky, right? And so people were listening to them and reporting this on YouTube. And so you see this coming. And Norman Rule said two very, very significant things. First, he says, there used to be a red line in the Middle East against direct attacks between Israel and Iran. They would not attack each other's territory. That red line has now been erased.
That's right.
And this is a whole new period that is opening in the Middle East. And the second thing that he said the reason the Iranians haven't wanted to do this before is because they're worried that they would then be hit back and it could be the end of their regime. So I balance those two things and I say, I wonder what other kind of guarantees Biden gave them. Did he say, well, we're going to prevent the Israelis from a counterattack? He said, we will not take part in a counterattack. But is he going to try to actually prevent the Israelis from counterattacking? Imagine if you are the president of France and Russia has just launched 170 drones, 30 cruise missiles, and 130 ballistic missiles against Paris. And you're going to sit there and do nothing? Really? Right. I mean, it would be astonishing for Israel not to counterattack Iran. It would be absolutely astonishing. But we'll have to see. I mean, can Biden really twist their arms so much that they cannot counterstrike? So the Iranians must think that he can. I'm not sure that's true.
Well, Iran has 15 known facilities that are very sensitive areas that they do not want attacked, that Israel is very capable of going after. The miraculous thing is that none of those projectiles entered into Israel territory. But what I'm guessing is that Iran feels emboldened by this. They also have to save face. And so, in my opinion, this is just the first time. And what I think is that they want to wear down Israel. And, that was a very expensive, they were on the defense. They were, intercepting. It cost them millions of dollars to do that, maybe upwards in the billions to defend their country. Now, my guess would be, would Iran want to deplete Israel's resources, and also spread them thin? I mean, they have to defend themselves in the north with Hezbollah. They're still trying to finish the job in the south with Hamas. And so, those are the questions.
Yes, a very important question. Now, actually, a couple of the missiles did get through. So the 170 drones were all taken out before they ever reached Israeli territory. The cruise missiles, which are also slow flyers, they were taken out primarily with the U.S. coordinating those strikes before they reached Israeli territory. The ballistic missiles, half of them, we're told now, half of them either misfired or they went off their target before they reached Israel. And Israel was able to take out 99% of the others with the Arrow anti-missile defense system. Each shot cost about $2 to $3 million of that system. And they downed, my guess is around 60 of them. A few got through near the Nevatim air base in the south of Israel, which is where Israel has its F-35 aircraft. That was a clear message from the Iranians. They were targeting that base because they know that those are the aircraft that Israel will use to strike nuclear facilities in Iran, should they do so.
And, not only that, we have American troops in that region, correct?
Well, in the region, but we do not have troops based in Israel. We never have. The Israelis have never asked for it. And frankly, many Democrat administrations have wanted to have U.S. peacekeepers between the Palestinians and Israel. It's a horrible, horrible idea. Look what the Palestinians do with peacekeepers. Anyhow, it's just a bad idea. It's an invitation to get Americans killed.
And also Russia's role in all of this. I know that there is they have a ship going out into the Mediterranean. Do you know anything about that?
Well, the Russians have a very close relationship with the Iranian regime. They have they have been providing them with ballistic missile technology. They have provided them with enrichment technology in the past. They have recently signed, $20 billion natural gas agreements going out for 20 to 30 years with the Iranian regime. Iran is sending them drones. So this is an increasingly close relationship between the two. And I would be stunned if Russia had not provided some intelligence to the Iranians, targeting intelligence or overhead geospatial imagery. I would be stunned if that hadn't happened.
Can you explain to the audience the relationship between the Sunni Arabs, the Sunni Muslims, and the Shiite Muslims? Can you break that down for the audience?
Well, look, I think a lot of people make too much of this, but there is a big divide in the world of Islam, and it's been there since the since the death of Muhammad and the followers of Muhammad's family, and others who thought that they should elect a new leader, and they ultimately wound up fighting each other. And there was a big battle known as Qadisiyah, and it took place where? In modern day Iraq, and it was between the Persians and the Arabs. Saddam Hussein, when he had his 8-year war with Iran, he called it Saddam's Qadisiyah, as if he were then reliving this war against the Shias. So they have slightly different beliefs, a little bit like Catholics and Protestants. However, it's important not to overestimate this. Yes, Sunnis and Shias can fight at breakfast, but by lunchtime, when they're killing Americans and killing Jews together, they get along just fine. So there's a long history of Shiite Iran helping Sunni terrorist groups, whether it's Hamas, right, whether it's the Taliban, or whether it's Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda. And Shiite Iran has helped all of them carry out anti-Israel and anti-America terrorist acts. So it's important not to overemphasize this Sunni-Shia divide, which is real, but it does not get in the way of anti-American, anti-Israel actions by the Iranians.
Right. So when there's a common enemy, that's when sometimes they can join forces and come together. But this was not the case this time, because the Jordanians and Saudi Arabia did cooperate with Israel by intercepting ballistic missiles as well, or I should say projectile.
The Saudis and the Islamic regime in Tehran have had a proxy war in Yemen for, I don't know, the past 8 years. And they are definitely geopolitical rivals. Each of those countries would like to control the Persian or Arabian Gulf, depending on which side of that body of water you happen to live. And so there's no mystery that they would be helping Israel in this case to take down those cruise missiles and drones coming from Iran. But I'm talking about Iran's relationship with terrorist groups, with Sunni terrorist groups. Now that's where you have that alliance. They will get together with terrorists of any flavor to kill Americans and kill Jews.
Right. Yeah, because the saying is death to Israel and death to America. So that's Israel's the little Satan, according to them. Israel's the little Satan and America's the great Satan. That's and what is your opinion? I know that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, they've been in the war cabinet, they've been convening, and what is your guess as to how they will respond? Of course, I think the element of surprise is the way that we should always operate. But I know a lot of people are trying to figure out, because they are getting international pressure from, American administration, which I believe is playing both sides here. I mean, they were sending messages via Turkey to Iran, and then yet they want to, on the forefront, they want to say they're supporting Israel, but so what is your opinion? How should Israel respond to this bully?
Well, first, I can't tell you what they're going to do, and I do not know what they're going to do. There's an old saying in kind of intelligence circles: "Them that know don't talk, and them that talk don't know." So,
True.
I don't know, and I'm not going to speculate what they are going to do. But I will say this: I am greatly impressed by Benjamin Netanyahu's political skills. He has convened together not just the war cabinet, but also members of the opposition, which to me suggests that he wants to have a national unity behind whatever action they take. He wants to have the whole country, from left to right, all of the political parties, with the exception of the Arabs, but all of the political parties in Israel behind him in whatever action he takes. And I think that's very important. And I think that shows a great deal of political maturity and savvy on his part.
Mm-hmm. Right. So if there were elections today for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the statistic is that he would win again. And I know there are some progressives on the left in Israel say, oh, there are those few that still will say that he should not be prime minister. Look what's happening. But the majority would vote him in once again. Is that correct?
Look, I haven't seen the latest polls. Israel is a very closely divided nation, just like the United States. He has this time 62 members of the 120-member Knesset, so he has a 2-vote majority. That was before this current crisis. I think now what they're trying to do is they certainly don't want to have a national election in the middle of the crisis. He wants to have national unity in the crisis behind whatever decision he and the war cabinet make. He wants to have buy-in from all sectors of the Israeli political spectrum. And I think that's a very wise thing to do.
Yes. So my prayer is that this conflict does end sooner than later, but it needs to get dealt with in an effective way, because we know, like I mentioned, Iran is a bully. And how do we deal with bullies? We have to be, I think they only understand and they only respect strength.
Well, the Iranians can be militarily deterred. This is something that sometimes gets overlooked. When President Trump killed Qasem Soleimani in January of 2020, he knew that he was coming to Baghdad to essentially launch a massive operation to storm the U.S. embassy. And this was after Iranian proxies had murdered 3 U.S. contractors in northern Iraq. And President Trump took what I think was a very courageous decision to take him out. And in my next book that's coming out, it's called The Iran House. I give you a little bit of backstory because I played a very small role in those events, and I believed it was important to show the Iranians that you can only go so far, and then we are going to take action. This is the problem with Biden. Deterrence only works if you have a president and if you have American leaders who stand up and in public say, this is what we are going to do. If you cross this red line, this is what we are going to do. And then you do it. Biden, warns, he says to Russia, well, you can maybe go into Ukraine. If it's a small incursion, it's okay. And here he says to the Iranians, well, you can kind of attack Israel as long as you do it within certain limits. I mean, that doesn't cut it. That is not a deterrent to a bully, as you call the Islamic regime. So I think what we need is a president who makes crystal clear what his position is and makes the Iranians understand the tremendously high price they will pay for the kind of actions that they took against Israel, for example.
Yes. So yes. So I don't know if I have anything else to add to this, but I wanted to thank you for taking the time to speak to this audience. We want to get the word out, and I'm just very I'm a little distraught over the lack of support for Israel. In this case, they are the victims, and they are there to defend their country. They are a sovereign nation. If what happened to Israel happened to cities in America where we live, how would we respond? How would we expect our government to respond? You know, and the word IDF is the Israeli Defense Force. You know, they're there to defend their nation. And, you know, I'm happy for them that they are unified at this time. That is so critical for them. And it's a lovely nation. It's beautiful. It's, you know, the rich history there. It's where our Savior was born and lived. And, you know, there's just so much to see there and experience. And it is the holiest place in the world. And, you know, it is the center of the universe. They say the Middle East is the center of the world, and Jerusalem is the center of that. So Ken, tell the audience how they can find you and also order your books. You are an amazing author, a prolific writer. Tell the audience how we can find you.
Very simply, just go to my website, which is kentimmerman.com. It's my name. You can also just plug that into the internet and you'll find articles that I've written. I put out a weekly newsletter by email that you can get by signing up from my website. And you can also listen, if you like, to Prophecy Today Weekend on Saturdays. But all that information comes from my newsletter from kentimmerman.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much once again. And audience, I just want to share a scripture with you. Genesis 12:3 says, those that bless Israel will be blessed, and those that curse Israel will be cursed, and that the world, the nations will be blessed by this little country, Israel. So God bless you, Ken. And I always like to say, God bless America, but God save America. And let our hearts be turned back to God. Thank you, everyone.
Amen. Thank you.
This show is brought to you by Ceci Truman.